Hey, thank you, Ruth. Hello, Dublin. Hello to the world. Very glad to be with you remotely for that session today. So let's go. Let's get into it because we've got so much time. So EIPM is a school. We're dedicated to deliver some tools related to assessment. We deliver education and research. I'm the head of research director. And I'm also delivering a number of training programs all over the world on the topic of procurement and innovation, procurement and circular economy, and so on. Today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the role of procurement in innovation and how, because of the stakes like decarbonation, digitalisation, and what's happening in terms of the evolution of the industry structures and the deglobalization, how we need to think innovation in a different way and focus more on systemic innovation. So this is typically how people in procurement see innovation. I have a one-to-one relationship between a buying company and a supplier. They see it as a bilateral game. But the world is changing. We have industry that are going through fundamental transition. Think of, the evolution of the automotive industry. It is not just about working with, a supplier of battery and then the world is ready. You need to think in much broader terms, in terms of course, the raw materials, the new technologies. You need to think in terms of the electric grid that is going to be necessary to provide electricity to electric vehicles. You need a charging infrastructure. The value of the car is nothing without it. You need to think recycling and how we're going to be implementing the recycling. So what we see is industries are going through transition for a number of reasons, and this industry architecture are changing. And the bilateral view that we have of the world is too limited. We need to think broader. But let's step back. Let's look at, what does it mean, innovation from a procurement standpoint? I'll be sharing with you some research that I've done 10 years ago. That's still very much valid. And I'll be trying to show you what is the direction. Whenever we want to contribute to innovation within a procurement context, we first need to understand the unmet needs. I'm not talking about requirements. I'm talking about, where is the industry, where is the company going, and what we will be missing into the future to realize our project, our aspiration. So something that we would need, but we don't have a solution for. It's very different from the classic requirement. We're moving, from understanding requirements within projects, some functional specification. Innovation is about looking at things well before a project is started, and we need to understand these unmet needs, and we need to understand the future innovation priorities of the company. Very often, in the classic world, we look at existing suppliers. So many people tell me, Hervé, I want to do innovation. I'm going to ask my top suppliers for their innovation. And I say, well, you should already have them. If they are your top suppliers, they should already be giving this to you. And sometimes innovation is not coming from your existing supplier. It might come from new supplier, or it might even come from, collaboration with unfamiliar and sometimes even multiple partners. Whether this is an association, a startup, very different animals, or whether this is a group of companies. So that's the most advanced perspective. And then, when we've got problems and when we've got solutions that we've been finding outside, we need to connect them together. So the very classic way of thinking about that was like, hey, let's involve supplier in development of the product, in having some cross-functional teams. But, you know, we need to think well beyond product these days. We need to think not just about development, but organizing innovation workshops and having some real cross-company project, not just cross-functional project where we invite suppliers from time to time. So let me get back to the topic of today, the 3D that are changing the world. Basically, if you want to understand the meaning of decarbonation, you look at all the industries that have been invented between 1880 and 1920. Raw materials, all the chemical company, transportation, the cement, all of this, construction materials, all of these, energy, oil, all these companies, all these industries are the one we need to completely reinvent. So these are the foundations of everything. If the economic world is a giant, we need to change the legs. And that is going to require a different way of thinking. Because here, this is a picture that describes the different type of emissions depending on the sector. So if you're on the right, if you work for a cosmetic company, well, actually, the emissions, the carbon footprint is probably with the supplier of your supplier of your supplier, very deep. But if you are a cement company, a steel company, you are producing these emissions because you're burning a lot of energy in order to make cement, steel, to extract raw materials from the ground, to produce the fibers for textile, and to produce chemicals. Wherever there is a lot of energy, you know, there will be very deep industrial changes. But if you're on the other side, in the fashion, in the fast-moving goods, cosmetic company, you know, you need to develop eco-design practice, circular economy practice, and to make that happen, the whole sector, the whole chain is going to have to share data and to work together to build circular flows. It's not a one-to-one relationship. The whole industry needs to evolve. Now, if we think of digitalization, this is something that sometimes poorly understand, but the process of digitalization is all about taking software out of machines and surrounding every single object and machines with software. We are moving into a software-defined world. So digital technologies are going to orchestrate everything. We'll be sharing data at the level of a complete industry in order to design together product, in order to orchestrate supply chain together, in order to, you know, deliver on-demand services triggered by, you know, digital triggers. And we need to have smart circularity. So whenever there's someone at the end that wants to recycle something, you know, they'll just take a picture or scan an ID on the product and they will have the instructions and they will know where to send it. And maybe they will have, you know, some money accessible to send it back to the initial manufacturer of the product or of the raw materials because there's value in it. So that's what digitalization is about, moving to this software orchestrated, software-defined world. And here, innovation very often requires more than one party. If we want to build this fairly simple, this is a case from one of my students, augmented reality tool for maintenance, we need, you know, the provision of hardware, these goggles and screens. We need software, we need data, we need potentially support service from local supplier. So we need to put together an ecosystem. We can't just work two companies together. We need to build this ecosystem to make this happen. So a collaboration that goes well beyond a one-to-one collaboration. We've been talking a lot over the past years about deglobalization. We can call it differently. You know, that's not my point. But let's think for a minute, you know. I keep hearing people saying, oh, we need to reshore solar panel. But, that is very narrow thinking. If you think of a solar panel, when you have the sun heating on the solar panel, what happened to the electricity? Well, it's going to go to a controller. It's going to go to an inverter. Where are they made? Well, in the same country where the solar panel is made. So just bringing back the solar panel is not going to change much because there's still the same level of dependency around. We need to think in systems. And if we want to refer activities, well, it's not just about the product, the factory itself. We need also a lot of skills, a lot of resources, a lot of know-how to make that happen for the maintenance, for, many of the activities. So we need to think in system and preferably circular ones. So we live in a world that's driven by decarbonation, the change of industry structure, deglobalization, and digitalization and AI. And all of this is pushing us to share data, have cross-supplier collaboration, implement circular and alternative sources of raw materials and products. All of that is about systemic innovation. So, systemic innovation, how do we make this happen? How do we, find a way to have a bigger impact? Many of you are students and you need to have ambitions. We're not just here to, make a simple, small level improvement. We need to contribute to change the bigger picture, the bigger system. So my first advice is to see the big innovation picture. Manage your stakeholder, everybody else in the company. Go to them and ask them a few questions. What's the main ambition in the next few years? What are the key projects coming? And then what are your biggest issue and problem? I did my PhD in economics on the history of inventors, trying to understand what were the abilities of inventors over 300 years. They'll go to people and they ask them for problems. They don't ask them for what you need. They ask them, what are the biggest problems you're facing today? And from the problem, they'll be looking for solution. That's very different. So very important message. Understand the business, gain business acumen, go to people around you, have a discussion, driving somewhere in a car or at the cafeteria or in an office. Understand the broader goals and ambition. Understand the pain point, the challenge, the biggest issue, the unmet needs, the problem they see. And then you can start thinking about what could be the contribution of existing or new supplier. But build that big picture first by understanding what are the true challenges we all together need to have an impact on. My second big advice for you is to act as a knowledge hub. Okay, very often procurement is seen as a project machine. We do a project to source something and another project and another project. But the true advantage, the true, benefit and what's unique about procurement is our ability to understand what's coming up in market, our ability to understand where innovation will be popping up. We need to act as a knowledge hub, not just as a project manager. We need to regularly provide information to key people in the company and even outside on new ideas from supplier, innovation, the evolution of the market, how decarbonation is taking place, what kind of digital solution can make a difference, and where do we see a relocalization of activities we could be benefiting from. So let's organize rituals, regular sessions where we invite supplier to present their roadmap, where we invite 2 startups to show what they can do, when we run an innovation workshop with a supplier, and when we bring an expert that can share the bigger picture. We need to act as a knowledge hub. We are managing knowledge, not project. And then we start to have a huge impact on stakeholders. They come to you and they say, hey, you know, this is a place where you know things. This is the place where you see in the future because you see how market evolve, how industry evolves. So you can help us put together the innovation that we need for tomorrow. See the bigger picture. Again, ambition, but from the other side. You know, we have that unique view. We're connecting the outside with the inside. So we need to be knowledge hub. Now you say, hey, that's a lot of talks, Professor, but you know, some companies are really making these changes. And I'm going to tell you about, you know, a mid-sized company. This is not the biggest cosmetic company in the world. They've got 3 brands. It's a French company, and it's called Naos. And I was interviewing not long ago their procurement director about their challenges. And then I said, you know, how do you address raw material challenges? And came up with a lot of very classic ways of doing it. Analyze the product life cycle, get some market intelligence on raw materials, analyze the weak signals to see, you know, what could impact the supply chain in terms of raw materials. Think in terms of diversification of raw materials, reduce the time it takes to approve supplier, maybe innovate with raw materials directly in your company, and try to implement circular economy by reducing or reusing. But then I discovered they also do a lot of things that are not just bilateral, but that are really collaborative and systemic. For instance, they've put together a group of companies, and I can share you some examples here. There is an industry association called COSMED, which is like a cosmetic industry association. What they do is they gain access to market intelligence that is shared with everybody in the industry. They get information on raw material price, their evolution, the trends, and everything like this. It's not just for one, it's for everyone. So they can all work based on the same information, which make a huge difference. Also, within this organization, all these companies working in the cosmetic world, they buy a lot of similar raw materials. And sometimes, you know, they've got like surplus residual inventories. So what did they do? They build a marketplace. So altogether, they can benefit from the residual inventories that the other ones have. Oh, you know, I'm short of this. Anyone maybe is trying to get rid of it. Okay, nice idea. Put everybody together, work together, make a difference together. Look at the bottom now. They also join a consortium that's looking at creating transparency and sharing information on supplier. If all the company go to their supplier and do different audits and ask them to implement a new way of doing the traceability of the raw material that goes into your cosmetic or product or drug, then it's a lot of paperwork. But if you can get together, work together, well, suddenly it's much better because you can have a standard. You can also, you know, join forces to educate your partner and explain to them why it's important to provide this data, to build a traceability and make things happen. So together, there's a whole group of companies that have joined Transparency One in order to have this supply chain transparency, traceability, making sure that all the audits of supplier are being shared, and they even start to integrate, you know, some alert mechanism across the complete industry to understand, you know, issues and risk. And the last one that's on the top, you know, another systemic initiative, another collaborative initiative is to work in ecosystems for innovation. Actually, there's 24 companies with industries, retailers, engineers, experts that have come together. They're from 7 countries, and they're looking at how you can implement a complete circular economy for product in the food or the cosmetic sector, working in consortium. And that's not just about setting up the flows. One of the big challenges we have to face is not just to innovate, but to scale. So, for instance, we can implement new technology for recycling that could be more efficient. But this new technology, using some chemical ways of recycling products to separate them and to gain access back to some of the basic raw materials, well, if only one company is using it, it's not super attractive to deliver that. But if suddenly you've got 24 companies that are moving into using that technology, you have a market, you have a demand, and we're allowing to go from a good idea that's implemented once or twice to something that can scale and make a much bigger difference. All these are examples of procurement getting into the systemic innovation, doing things together, because together we're stronger than alone. There is nothing about competitive advantage here. Together we can go so much further. We can still keep our competitive advantage of the recipe into the perfume or the cosmetic. But the rest, we can work together and make a difference with competitors, with suppliers, with other partners. Final advice, don't stay alone. Biggest way to change something into the future is to stay within networks. Join a local networks of procurement people. Join a global group of people interested in circular economy, decarbonization, digitalization. Pick your networks and stay connected. Nourish yourself from the bigger view, the bigger picture. Again, together, we can make much more impact by sharing and learning throughout the whole life. Final advice. Stay connected. That's my email, that's my LinkedIn, Share your experience, share your cases in the future. You benefited from that when you were at school. Keep going.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I just have a couple of moments before we finish up, so I'm going to just maybe pose a couple of questions to you. What are the key systematic barriers or challenges that need to be addressed to ensure the successful and equitable implementation of these innovations?
Well, there's quite a lot, but the first one is our own cognitive frames. By nature, we are procurement, or we are logistics, or we are this. And immediately we start to think small. We can do that because I'm going to be stepping on someone's toes, or because maybe this is someone else's role. So the first one is our head, making sure that, we see the opportunity, we size the opportunity, we start the change, and then we institutionalize it. So that's the first one. There's so much we can do with the right mindset and the right attitude. The second one I think is important is inside companies, everybody thinks that, we can't share the data. We can't share the information. It's secret. It's so important for our competitive advantage. Yes, some of it is, but come on. We can find a lot of ways of anonymizing information, of, separating information and finding ways of sharing in order to create all together a bigger common that can help us to go further. If we don't do that, we are going into decay. We are going into a world where procurement will be important because we'll be scavengers. Okay? But if we want to be the architect of the future, we need to educate everyone to understand when we are ready to share the right information with the right people to build the right level of collaboration with everyone. That's for me the two steps, the mental barrier and the ability to say, yes, we can share information.
I think that's a really good note to end your presentation. Thank you so much for such a very thought-provoking presentation. We really appreciate it. And on behalf of Trinity College Dublin and E3, we really like to thank you for your time this afternoon as part of European Supply Chain Day.
It's a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
For those in the session, our next panel discussion will start in 2 minutes, which will be the panel discussion topic will be the role of young professionals in shaping the future of supply chains and engineering. So that'll take place in 2 minutes if you want to move over to the other session. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.